Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, July 17th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. The Sporting KC restart is underway, and the team couldn't have scripted a more heartbreaking loss in the opener to Minnesota. Sporting played a man down over the final 20 or so minutes, gave up 2 goals in extra time, and fell 2-1. Time to put it behind and move forward. The MLS is Back tournament continues for Sporting tonight when it meets Colorado. There'll be a new goalkeeper. Will there be a different result? Shaun Goodwin, who covers Sporting for the Star, provides his thoughts. After a break, you'll hear from Peter Vermes, who was his usual honest self in speaking about the loss. He also opens up about the importance of the tournament. So here's Shaun Goodwin on Sporting KC and a bit of personal news from earlier this week. All right, Shaun. Interesting week for Sporting KC, and we're going to get into that in a moment, but it's also been something of an interesting week for you in terms of citizenship.
It has.
Yeah. So you took your U.S. citizenship test earlier this week, and take us through that. And how'd the process go?
Yeah, so it's been 9 years coming, basically. To cut 9 years short, you get your green card after 5 years of being in country. For me, it was 4. My dad's company fast-tracked it, and then 5 years later, you can take the citizenship test. So, we scheduled it months ago. It was pushed back because of COVID. Finally did it Tuesday morning. And really, there's a US Immigration's office here in KC, so you head down there. There's basically 100 questions. It's a pool of 100 questions. They give you 10 random questions, and you have to get 6 correct. Super easy questions. Out of the pool, there's some harder ones, like who wrote the Federalist Papers? Hamilton. He wrote 29 or something. But the ones I got, it was like, name the two major political parties in the US, or how long do we vote in a senator for? It's just super easy stuff. So I just got 6 out of 6 right off the bat. And aside from that, we mostly just chatted soccer, honestly. It was fun.
Great.
Yeah, it was that, and I guess it's protocol. But they had a bunch of questions that the officer had to ask me. It was stuff like, have you ever been associated with a terrorist organization? Have you ever tortured somebody? And I'm just kind of sitting there like, I hope not. I don't think I've been part of a terrorist organization. So it was fun. Yeah, it was easy.
And whether you tortured somebody, that might be up to the other party. In what situation might someone have been tortured? Could be a conversation. Yeah. You never know.
Yeah, we'll keep up on PG-13.
Right. Okay. Well, as you are, where were you born?
I was born in Liverpool, England. I mean, moved
in Liverpool.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so in Liverpool. So this means, of course, that that you've got to drop some dialogue, some language. It's no longer for you a flat. You have to live in an apartment, and you can have a biscuit, but you have to have the American kind of biscuit now. The biscuits come with gravy. It can no longer be a cookie.
Yeah.
And chips. No, buddy. It's French fries from now on for you.
Yeah.
And I never the one that always confused me is crisps. Tough to say.
Crispy.
Crisps. Yeah. Tough to say.
Whenever I go back home, my parents live South Overland Park. So whenever I go back there, I often revert back to my English and Scouse ways. The accent drops back in, and I just start saying football instead of soccer, and mobile instead of mobile.
Well, as long as you don't say controversy, that's the one that always got to me. So,
I say controversy. I'm sorry. Yeah, I still say that now. Because some words that I say, I don't realize, and people are like, "What are you saying?" But I can't get that out of my mind.
Or did you take your vitamins daily?
Vitamin D.
Well, I'll tell you what, it wasn't there wasn't much controversy with the Sporting KC outcome, just a lot of sadness
Yeah.
on Sunday night against Minnesota. Gosh, we will absolutely spin ahead to the Friday game against Colorado. We're recording this on Thursday, so we might be referring to tomorrow's game, even though this is being aired on Friday. But let's go back to the loss, the 2-1 loss to Minnesota. I guess if you had told me before the game that the outcome would be a 2-1 loss to Sporting, I'd have been surprised. Sporting was the better team.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota seemed a little shorthanded, but the way in which it happened was just a gut punch of a loss with 2 extra time goals for Minnesota. The second one coming, in the 97th minute. Oh my
97th
gosh.
minute. Yeah.
Oh. Let's. I guess there are a lot of places to start talking about this, but probably the best place to start is the 74th minute and the Tim Melia red card that turned things around. I think things had started to turn around before that, but Tim Melia's. But I think Sporting could have survived with 11v11. That was not the case, and to see a goalie red card, you just don't see that so very often. First of all, was it the right call, and did it change the game?
It was the right call. I mean, you see a couple of people arguing futilely that, one of the Sporting KC defenders had got back towards goal behind Melia, so he wasn't the last man. But at the end of the day, if Melia hadn't came flying out of his box, said defender wasn't about to cover him, and the attacker would have been through on goal, and who knows whether he would have scored at 1-1 or not. But at the end of the day, he got the ball past Melia about 20 yards out, and then he's been taken out. If he got past Melia, he would have had a 1-on-1 with a defender in a wide open goal. So you can argue whether he was the last man or not, but it's a red card every day of the week.
Yeah. And look, the game, I think we can agree the game had started to change. Minnesota had a goal taken away by video review before this. I mean, I think that was in the 60th minute. Sporting led 1-0 at halftime. So the feeling of the game had changed, but really after Richard Sanchez replaced Melia, the whole thing felt like it was a downhill game for Minnesota. And it was just the bleeding just never stopped for Sporting KC.
No, and I feel a little sorry in that for Sporting, in that they did dominate that first 60, 65 minutes. Minnesota was barely in the game, and yes, they had the disallowed goal, but it was pretty much their first or second good chance at goal the whole game. As soon as they scored that, they smelt blood a little bit and gained a little bit of confidence, and then once Melia was sent off, Richard Sanchez, he has the support of his teammates, of his manager, of course, and he's said that these past couple of days. But at the end of the day, you're missing a huge voice, a huge command, huge leadership with Tim Melia that you just don't have with Sanchez, and the defensive line isn't used to playing with him, and he hasn't played MLS games since 2018. So when you're down to 10 men with a backup goalkeeper backed up against the wall, it's tough. And I was impressed Kansas City got to the 92nd minute before finally conceding. But as soon as I saw the 7-minute stoppage time, I just said to myself, Kansas City isn't holding on to this.
And of course, the first one was the own goal off of Shelton. And the second one, Sanchez playing for the first time. He only played sparingly a year ago. You can't put the blame on him. I think Melia might have stopped one of those, but gosh, in the circumstance of playing a man down over the final 20 to 25 minutes in heat after not having played for 4 months, just a little too much to ask, I think, of Sporting here. And the there were some other issues in this game that I saw. One of which was set piece defense
Hmm.
for Sporting. The goal that was disallowed came off a set
Yep.
piece, and of course the winning goal did as well. And just some missed opportunities early. We said it was 1-0 at halftime. I thought it should have been at least 2-0 at
Hmm.
halftime. I thought Joseph Fernandez, has great ball skills, but I thought he was just a little off in terms
Hmm.
of timing and touches, and maybe that's just going to come with a little more playing time.
You hope it does. Early in the second half, you had Kyrie Shelton played through JSO, literally clean Shaun goal. Shelton made a run to the back post. You had a 2v1 basically, and JSO, instead of taking a touch and composing himself, tries to play a half-hearted ball across the box that goes straight into the keeper's hands, right into Tyler Miller's hands.
Yeah.
But Gadi Kinder too. I mean, he still plays well, but the first half he could have had 2 goals before half time. One, he decided to take a shot from 40 yards out, despite being through 1 goal. And then he missed a difficult volley from about 6 yards out. But at the end of the day, if Sporting scores even one of those goals, it's 2-0. You look later down the line, maybe Melia doesn't feel like he has to come out. He doesn't get a red card. And it's a different game at that point.
Right. Okay, so Friday night against Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
What do you expect? We are going to see Sanchez in goal, of course.
Yes.
What to expect from this game?
Yeah, so I found it interesting that you made a good point about Sporting KC having troubles on set pieces when now they're going to face a team who is perhaps the most lethal team when it comes to set pieces in the past year, both off free kicks and corners. So, Sporting are really going to have to limit the free kicks that they give away and the set pieces they give away to Colorado. If you take a quick look at Colorado's 2-0 loss to Real Salt Lake, also on Sunday, Colorado only had 1 free kick within 30 yards of goal and just 4 corners the whole game. And past that, all they've really got is the counter-attack up to former Sporting KC man Kai Kamara, who's really good at holding up the ball and heading it down for teammates. So, your 2 big keys to the game, I suppose, for Sporting are, limit the set piece opportunities, because obviously they've struggled with that, and they have a goalkeeper who doesn't have the same communication as Melia, and then just to watch the long ball counter attack up the field to Kai Kamara and Diego Rubio, another Sporting KC guy.
Okay, so Sporting KC going to look for a result on Friday against Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to take a break, and when we come back, you're going to hear from Peter Vermes, who I thought was, as he always is, honest and thorough with his responses to reporters' questions, including Shaun's, at a news conference on Wednesday. And before we go, I just wanted to call attention to a story that Shaun wrote in midweek. It's now on the kansascity.com website, and the headline is "Sporting KC Trio Helps Lead Movement for Change in How Black People Are Viewed and Treated." Shaun spoke to the black players on Sporting Kansas City and came up with a terrific story about a great anecdote to get into the story too, I got to say, Shaun. So read it. I'm going to link to it on the show notes. And of course, like I said, it's on kansascity.com. So stay tuned for Peter Vermes, and we'll say goodbye to Shaun, and we'll talk again soon, Mr. American Citizen.
American citizen in 2 more months when I get my naturalization ceremony, but we're almost there. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Almost like getting a driver's license, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I appreciate it, Blair, and hopefully next time we talk, we'll have a little bit of a happier conversation about Sporting.
All right. Sounds good, Shaun. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeat KC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
The first day was a regen day for the guys that played, and the guys that didn't had a little bit of a more difficult session. It was more like the second day. Everybody was together, and I think the guys were extremely disappointed in the result. It was probably very noticeable in training those first couple of days. Just they were disappointed as well, but that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's if they're not feeling it, then there's a problem. So, but since then, training's been very good. Guys have been very attentive and concentrated, and it's about us trying to get better from game to game as we're here.
You mentioned the lack of productivity in and around the box and not being able to finish chances as being a disappointment following that game. Is there anything in particular in training that you and the team have been working on to maybe minimize some of those missed opportunities?
It's not just on the field. It's also in video sessions, just talking about how we've done in those situations much differently before. And there's some things on the field as well. But, I always say that a season it's a ladder, and you try to climb steps and you're trying to get to the top. And, when we played the game, there was some real lessons to be learned from it. And I think that, I think we have. And for me, the important thing now is that when you go into this next game, your performance has to be better in those areas that you were, maybe not so good at. And that's going to be the focus.
Peter, it appeared from my perspective that your guys ran out of gas late. How much of that was the playing a man down, and how much of it was just not being sporting fit?
The man down. It was the man down. First off, I've said this before, when you come into this kind of climate, you build up to it over the course of when the season starts, and you probably play somewhere between 10 and 15 games. And now what you've established is a fitness level for soccer and 90 minutes fit. Well, none of us have that. And so going down a man, huge impact on the team, huge impact. And I always remind the guys before games. I always tell them, look, you start with 11, you got to finish with 11. You got to be really smart in those situations. And unfortunately, it took a lot out of us for sure. I feel that if we would have been 11v11, I think probably the result would have been different. But we also put ourselves in that position. So, I'm not making excuses. It's reality. But we are the ones who put ourselves in that position. We should have scored a second or third goal early, and probably in the first half, and it would have made the rest of the game that much different. Tim wouldn't have maybe made the decision that he did, but it's a good learning lesson for us. It's early on in our season. It's the third game of our season, so for us to have that type of opportunity to learn something from it, it helps us as we move forward.
And how much confidence do you guys have in Sanchez?
Yeah, I've been with him now the whole entire preseason up through this time, and I've always liked him from afar. And now that I work with him, every day, he's a great professional. Really, really sees the game and reads the game really well. It's always tough for a goalkeeper to come into a situation like he did in our game, but absolutely have all the confidence in the world in him entering the match and playing on Friday.
Peter, I was wanting to ask you about the sports science aspect of this tournament. Obviously, teams are playing at different times. Your third game is going to be a morning kickoff from early evening. Can you just talk a little bit about how much you're having to rely on that side of things, and maybe just how you've seen that change in the game over the last few years?
Well, there's a principle. It's called SAID. It's an acronym, SAID. It stands for Specific Adaptations to Impose Demands. And basically, the definition or the example of that would be is that if you're going to play, in really, really hot weather, humid weather, you need to train in really hot, humid weather. Fortunately, before we left, Kansas City wasn't. There were some days where it was really hot and, it was humid, but then there were a lot of other days where it was overcast for, a week, 10 days, and it was cooler out. And so that had a big effect, I think, for us. I said from the get-go, teams like Houston, if Dallas was still here, the two, Orlando and Miami, Atlanta, those teams would have they have an ability that was different than I think a lot of the other teams. I even think the two LA teams, because it can get really hot. Now it's not the same heat. It's not humid. It's a little more dry. That would have a big effect with different teams playing in the games. We obviously have to look at a lot of different things, but also, to your point, we're playing 2 games at 8 p.m., 1 at 9 a.m. Where the difference is that it's not like all of a sudden you can start training at 9 a.m. and then train at 8 p.m. because the guy's clock's going to be all over the place. So we chose to kind of stay with our normal training time. We're actually training a little bit earlier than our normal training time. And the only reason being is because you kind of pick your poison. So we usually train around 8 o'clock in the morning. Normally we train at 10. Where the issue is if you train at the 10:30 time slot, a lot of times what happens is the thunderstorms here in Florida roll in. And so now your training session gets interrupted. And so which one do you want? Which inconvenience do you want? And so it's still been very hot at 8 o'clock. So I think we're still getting the kind of weather that we need. But also our sessions aren't being interrupted. And I wouldn't say just for this tournament, but I would say for a long time now, we've used, the data as a real, we use it as information to make good decisions in regards to our players. And I think every team uses it pretty well and does a pretty good job with it. The thing that's always very difficult to measure, and you can't measure it with the physical data, is where the guys are mentally. Because it's a different world down here. It's surrealistic in so many ways, right? Where it's all just soccer teams in a hotel. We go basically, only time we can leave is we get on a bus and we go to the training field and we come back. Everywhere you are, you're a mask, just yesterday was first time in probably like 7 days that we kind of ate together again, a meal, because normally we would go in and just grab our meal and go back to your room. So, it's kind of interesting. This is an individual sport like tennis or golf. This is a team sport, and these guys have been around the team for, the majority of their life. It's kind of that camaraderie. It's that interaction that you have. And, we've missed that, ever since the moratorium came in back in March. And we started to get it back again when we were in Kansas City, went to full team training. And now we're back to this, you're individual. And, there's times where you spend 20 hours in your room a day. That's not easy, I gotta tell you. So I know I actually said a lot of other things in there, but it's not an easy one.
Peter, with the results today, about more than 1,200 tests coming back negative, no positive tests. When you hear that news, what does it do for you? What does it do for your team? Does it kind of let you allow to concentrate more on soccer when you hear that?
It does. It for sure does. I would say the last so many days we've had a little bit of, I think everybody probably has had a little bit of trepidation every time you're waiting for the results to come back, because you're just not sure if somebody else may have caught it or, might have got infected somehow. So, yeah, I think we're kind of past that point. I think we're pretty close. And, I have to say that, our staff and everybody's done a really good job in making sure that even when we got the one person infected, that, we had really good tracing and we're able to, isolate a little bit with some other people just in the short term. And it's all seemed to work really well. And so, yeah, it does. It gives us a lot of confidence. And I think the other thing, too, is that at this point, I think we're getting to that place where all the teams that are here now are here, and they truly are in a bubble, so to say. I'm sure there's a couple different ways that you still could get it here, but I think those have been minimized as much as possible.
Peter, a couple of days after the first game, recovery-wise, how are the players doing? Is it how you normally expect to see them, or because of the long break, or is it taking a little bit longer for these guys to recover?
It's actually not. It's not that bad. The guys have done okay. Again, this whole thing about training and everything, you also have to be really careful, because you have to cut your sessions down a little bit, because you got to be really intelligent around not overtraining. And I say overtraining not from a time point of view, but just from a load, because you got to add in the humidity and the heat. And so, but the guys have done a pretty good job of recovering and kind of getting themselves back into things. And, it's definitely a challenge, but the guys have done a good job. And I think that, they got a good base of fitness. We just need to get to 90 minutes fitness, for soccer.
And then Colorado up next. Just what do you see from their loss against Real Salt Lake? And I guess what you're expecting from them Friday?
I expect them to be very aggressive against us. I expect them to high press and try to put us under a lot of pressure. I also expect them to try to counter really quickly when they win the ball. And I also think they have a threat in the air with Kai. Kai's very, very good in that if you play a ball in the air to him in the build-up, he actually does a really good job of, knocking the ball down for someone on his team. He's got good directional heading. So that's another piece that we'll have to try to be really good on his second balls in the game, especially around him.
And then just my last question. I know it's a couple of days old now, but you guys sent Baraf back off to Europe. What was the reason behind that transfer? Was it he wanted to go back home, or what was it?
It really was a combination of things, but probably the biggest thing is that he wants to play, and he had an opportunity to go back to his old club. And I've always been very accommodating in that idea. If players think that they have something better somewhere else, I am always willing to listen. The opportunity has to fit both sides when it happens, and if it does happen. And in this situation, I think the other thing too is that I think he was here by himself. His significant other was supposed to join him this year. She couldn't because of what had transpired, and she still couldn't come here. And so I think that it was also a family type thing as well. And so I understood, and he was a good guy here, worked hard, and at the end he had to make another choice. But I understand it was not a problem, and I feel that we're covered in the area of the field anyway.
Coach, you bring up Kai Kamara, former player of Sporting Kansas City, Diego Rubio, another one on the Colorado roster, who also had spent some time with the club. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages to playing former players? On one hand, they understand your defense, maybe from an offensive standpoint, but on the other hand, your defenders and your team understand their game as well. So some advantages and disadvantages.
Well, the disadvantage is if they're like me, when I got traded, I always wanted to kill my old team. So that's a disadvantage for sure. Look, they obviously know a lot about our club, and they know a lot about what we do and how we do things. But at the same time, I think that, most teams nowadays focus on themselves and try to, pick up a couple little important aspects of a team and then focus on that. And then everything else kind of gets, blurred and more focused on yourself. And then the other piece too is that it's my experience that, I wish those guys remembered everything. They don't. Once they move on, they kind of forget a lot of things that you did. They only remember it after they retire. And then they sit back and they think, I actually was pretty good, or I really didn't like it there, or whatever. But they change their mind later. They're in the heat of it now. It's current. So, but for me, there's a lot of players. I mean, I just was walking in here. I just spoke with Teal Bunbury and Seth Sinovic, and it's always interesting to see those guys. So there's a lot of guys on a lot of teams that have been through this club.
Peter, I've always known you to be very, very positive. When you look at you talk about how this world is surreal and being in this bubble, but this is the way it had to be in order for soccer to return. If you look at the whole thing, is it worth it for what everybody's had to deal with and go through? Do you think that what you guys are doing there right now is worth it to get this season started, even if you have to do it this way?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not towing the line here by any means. I really do. We would be bored out of our mind being back in Kansas City, just training every day with no goal, objective in sight to play a game. This really helps jumpstart what we're doing. I also think that this has allowed us to figure out a lot of things, probably when we all go back to our markets. And I don't mean I'm not just talking about Kansas City, but I'm talking about all the teams in the league, about how we probably want to continue to advance the testing going forward. What are the protocols for if someone does get infected? We didn't really experience a lot of that. And, the league wasn't experiencing any of that because they don't run a team. Now they got 26 teams all in one spot, and there's a lot of consistency. There's a lot of examples of how to do things. And so I think we've learned a lot. I think it's going to help us when we go back into our markets. And I also think that I think we have to, try to start getting back to our lives as much as possible. And I know, you want to do that in the most safest way possible. But man, it is. I do say I use the word surreal. It is surreal at times, but my best part of my day is when I'm out on the field with the team for training or going to a game. And so that's what we want to try to keep doing. And I think all the guys realize that too, because we wouldn't be playing right now a game if we weren't here.
That'll do it for today and this week on SportsBeat KC. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Savannah Smith, and Chris Fickett. Tip of the cap to Shaun Goodwin for talking Sporting Kansas City. Links to stories about Sporting KC can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands and still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes the Sports Extra with the e-edition. There are about 30 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage. The details at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back Monday with a new episode.